Okay, well, here we are. I'm holding on for the little bit of Easter that remains on the calendar. And as I said somewhere recently, it's practice for us. We get 50 days to try to think about how we might live this for the next 315 days. Because it's hard. Clearly, it's hard. It's Pentecost is obviously the largest church service we have, but I think it's trying to understand what resurrection means. And that's how I want to start this morning before we get into the text, is why don't we just go around the room and a quick check-in, and maybe if you thought of something about I get it, we talked about this in the beginning, so I do know that, but I wonder now, here we are, 6 weeks in, what does resurrection mean? Is it different? Is it the same? Is it just about Jesus and that biblical recollection of that moment in time? Or is it about something else? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, Ginger, then I'm gonna start with you.
But you need to know, you do need to know when to speak up.
Yeah, don't even call.
She doesn't want to leave me hanging, I get it, okay. So Ginger, what about it as your idea of resurrection, or anything
I
about
think we have to think about our own resurrection and hope we're going to get ourselves up to the heavenly hopes.
So you can see it as a possibility for your own life.
Of course.
Don't worry. I mean, me too, but not everybody. Some have doubts, as they say in the scripture. Some doubted. Is that what they said? Some believed in it, but yet some doubted.
Well, I think probably some do doubt it, but I don't. I'm not in a hurry to get there, but I'm aware it's coming, so be prepared to get ready.
Get ready. Get ready. We should all be getting ready. Okay, Corbell.
My thoughts on resurrection. I have questions. Is resurrection linear or circular? And is it a single event or continuing event in my life? And, we're told a story here that is a single event with massive consequences. And I'm most comfortable in incorporating in my life as continuing and circular. That is, this is how it makes me get up and go.
That sounds good.
Yes, the Ginger Dempsey's feel
Next time she'll let somebody else go first, and then she can piggyback on somebody else.
Thank you.
I like the whole circular thing. It brings to mind the Bible study that we do on Monday mornings with Marty White, on Breathing Underwater, which is Richard Rohr's 12-step program, and how Christianity fits into that. At any rate, I see the steps as something that I want to see circular. Anytime you see the 12 steps printed, they're 1 through 12. But when I worked in a treatment center, I used to tell the patients, just forget that linear thing. See them in a circle, get in the middle, roll your pants legs up, kick your shoes off, and don't even think about leaving. Stay in the circle. That's one thing about it. The other thing is, there is not a Monday that we spend with Marty that she doesn't say the most important line that ever struck her heart was, listening to a man say, Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again. And she said, for whatever reason, that time that I heard it just really hit home. So I'm telling you, she'll say it 4 or 5 times. What occurred to me this past week was the little verb in there. Christ has died, Christ will rise, no, wait, help me the order again. Christ has died, Christ is, has, is, and will, has, is, and will. And they're short, they're for certain words. You know, and I like that, I noticed that for the first time, and that's the importance to me of resurrection. Anyway, I don't know if any of that makes sense. I'll try again. Go ahead.
So
Mr. Welling,
I was gonna say the same, pretty much similar to what you said. If I don't see it as I'd see it as a continuum. I love your words, circular and
Linear.
linear, or non-linear, as the case may be. But I think it is a continuum. I mean, I don't particularly think the idea of all of a sudden you die and you're different in the sense of your spiritual connection to God. Why not accelerate it and make it part of your life now? I mean, that's supposed to be kind of important.
That's too bad.
amen and amen, man.
So, anyway, but I like your words, and I think, I think, you know, this isn't about Easter. Easter just happens to be the event, but if you think about all the things we study throughout the year, that is central to everything. So, you know, it's not an Easter event so much as it is circular.
Yeah,
To use a phrase I once heard.
sound familiar.
Well, I must say, everything you said is just what I've been thinking too, that, you know, I don't see it as just something in the future. I see it as an everyday event, resurrection. And what she was saying about that, whenever we say that Christ has died, Christ has risen, when we say the will, I always emphasize that. I mean, it just means a lot to me to say Christ will come again.
Take it to the bank.
Yeah, but yeah, everything you said, it's an
Well, he
everyday
has.
thing.
He's here now.
He's here now,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. I think the reason that we, you know, that we live into the particularity of the event is kind of what our call is. If we choose to do that. If you remember last Sunday's gospel, you will do greater things than these. And I don't think he was talking about the invention of an airplane, right, or television, or social media, although perhaps he was. But the greater things is whatever in us that is of God. And so I've been thinking about resurrection just in a similar way, in that the opportunity exists for me to resurrect some part of me, right? Like resurrect some thing that I have considered dead. Compassion, humility. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I am just beginning to do this. And that, this possibility that Jesus can appear and how he appears and what form that takes and what is that experience like, you know, and what part of that is just my own ego. And then, this is probably more than you all want to know, but anyway, you know, whether that, and is that of God and is that it? So, it's been a consolation to me this season, this idea of resurrection. So that's how I'm thinking about consolation. Yeah. You can rip on any of the other things.
No, I think that for me, that's saying, when every time we say it, and we say Christ will come again, and I always say under my breath, he's here right now. He's here right now. We don't have to wait. He will come again. He's right here, you know, and to me, that's the important thing, that people, that you live the resurrection every day in your own life, and that you know, because it's when people hear that story, they go, oh, sure. And the crazies are out, you know, but, it's it's a way of life to me, and that's what's, you look for, I mean, I see Christ in everybody sitting here. So that's to me resurrection all around me, which may not be a good thing, but that's what it is.
And the crazies are out. The phrase that takes
Just crazy.
Well, I was gonna say, I just think that through all the studies and the stuff I've been really reading about lately is my peace and comfort. And it's just really, I mean, it's there, you know. For example, I'm a very anxious flyer. I've had some very bad flights, you know. This last week when I was flying, it's like, it was peaceful, even though there's some turbulence and stuff like that. I did grab my husband's hand once, but it wasn't that, oh my God, what happens to the plane? It was like, well, just it's fearing me, but if my life were to end right now, I'm very comfortable with everything that I'm just presented with and in my heart.
It's a real tangible resurrection feeling.
I have some Xanax that'll make you feel better when you get on that airplane.
I used to do that. I take Valium all the time, but
Just on the airplane.
and alcohol, Valium and alcohol.
That sounds like a terrible combination. Deadly, I think, but sometimes, Laura, how
I'm
about you?
not sure what the question was. Are you talking about resurrection?
I just wanted to, we've been together for 6 weeks, and so it's
True.
kind of like, what is that, where are you now? Because I think I asked that question on the first week, and, yeah.
This thing's been around the horn, so you can make it any kind of question. It's like somebody, you start a rumor here and you get.
It's like
Then you get back up there, it's completely different.
What I've been thinking of, listening to you guys too, and what we've done before is, to me, resurrection is restoration or renewal. And it may not be all at once. It's like what you were saying, in a way, sometimes there might be parts of us that are a little dead or dying that need restoring. And, I'm having some weird, neck, back, shoulder stuff, but I just had a massage at the physical therapist. So I know this sounds corny, but that was renewal.
That's good.
So, I think we're always in this process of building and coming apart, and that we just have to keep God and or Jesus and what he has done for us in our hearts, and let that be a focus. And, accept what we can accept and make things better any way we can, without drugs and alcohol.
That's just airplane.
Yeah, just for airplane.
All right, well, thank you. And I'm
Sure.
glad you made it, and glad you had a massage. Very jealous. So we're to that point in these stations of light, in these stations of resurrection, we've come to, in the order that I did them, follow sort of the timeline in scripture, right? We take them from many different gospelers. So there's, right, did Mark talk to John, and did Mark talk to Matthew, and did Matthew talk to Luke? Probably not.
They all got it from Mark.
That's what they tell us now,
Yes.
right? Scholars say by the use of words and how they used it and all that, but anyway. Mark probably is the first recorded gospel, and John would be the last one, and in between there came the others. So it's like, so as the passion stories, as with the birth narratives, right? They're not all in one gospel. They don't happen sequentially. We scrunch them all together so that we have angels and magi and the shepherd boy and things we've made up. We put them all there together in a manger that looks like a barn from North America. So, that's the way we did with a white Jesus. So that's the way we tell a story. And it's awesome because it has all the parts in it. And that happens in the same way with the passion narratives and the appearance narratives, right? Like that, we just kind of smush them all together. So, but there is kind of an order in that we start with the empty tomb. You remember way back when? And we started there, and now this is an appearance that maybe happened like a week after, not long, okay? So they had those two experiences of seeing Jesus in the upper room, that place that felt safe to them. I think that's my takeaway from the upper room experience. That's a place that felt safe. Maybe it was like a womb. Maybe it was someplace they were talking about, well, are you gonna go to the east side of town and I'm gonna go to the west side of town? Well, maybe that wasn't what happened. Maybe they said, hey, who wants to go fishing? So, because this is where we find ourselves today. We find ourselves with Jesus, coming upon the disciples fishing. And there'll be elements, like he'll be listening to these elements that we've heard in these other resurrection appearances, and to tell me what you think they are, right? Because there are things that have something in common with those other stories that we've been talking about. Would someone like, to read this, if you have your stuff, you would drink some water. I mean, that one.
Which station are we on?
Thinking about the fishing.
I think it's
Nine.
nine.
Jesus appears by the sea.
Okay. Got it. Here you go.
I don't know, is there anyone else who'd like to read? Kate would like to read.
I asked if you wanted me to do it.
No, I don't, I want someone to feel moved to read it, or not.
I'll read it.
All right, so, very good then.
Maybe. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. Okay, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas, called a twin, Nathanael of Cana of Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. He said to them, we will go with you. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, you have no fish, have you? They answered him, no. He said to them, cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the lake. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you have caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This is now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead.
Thank you. So, what is it that is similar to other resurrection stories that we've read together?
Well, of course, they didn't recognize him at first.
Right, so we have this thing, they did not recognize him. Anything else that?
Well, the breaking of the bread.
Yeah. Mhm.
The fish and the bread being used again.
Mhm. And then, maybe even, beyond the resurrection appearances, why would this setting, what does that setting mean to us?
Well, I think when he first called the disciples, you know, that saying, come fish for men.
Yeah.
Is there any significance to 153 fish?
Or 100 yards from shore.
And charm.
The way that some of the gospel writers use that, and in the Old Testament too, you'll notice from time to time, there'll be a specific number, not like 100,000 or something like that, but something very specific. And what I've heard, but how people have taught that is to sort of say, this is the point, this is what helped somebody remember the story, to tell the story to someone else. So those touchstones, like, I am sure that you remember many, many of your golf scores.
Especially the good ones.
The good ones, not the bad ones, the good ones.
Well, I could give you a bunch of numbers that
Yes.
don't hear the ears.
Yeah, right, but that, you can remember where you were, how you played.
Yeah.
So does that make sense to sort of say like 153 fish is like saying I made par? I mean, you know, or just a way for them, a touchstone to sort of say, the fishing story, what are the facts? How are people gonna remember the story? And so I think the 153 in that case, and it's also large, right? Catching 153 fish, unless they're like sardine size, is pretty large. It's a pretty large number, and so there's abundance there. When you think of 153, you don't think, oh, that's nothing, right? You think that's something, that's a bunch of fish. So that idea of abundance, which we associate with what Jesus represents in the world, I have come to have life, and so that you can have, I've come so you may have life and have it abundant.
I was hoping the answer was something more mystical than this.
You'll have to look that up on your own again, report back.
Okay.
Laura?
I have a question about the commonality of people not the disciples not recognizing Jesus. Is it something obscured within their eyes, or is Jesus disguised, or do we have a clue?
Well, I think there's some people who might read it as Jesus disguised, if someone thinks, you know, depending on what your own theology is about how you come to know God and Jesus. If, for example, there are many traditions in which God is, you know, mysterious and hidden, and thinking about an Orthodox church, for example, and then, you know, like, but in our tradition, generally, it would be our eyes. It wouldn't be an attempt by God to disguise God's self. It would be our ability to receive that God is already there. And how many times have we experienced that when we talk about it, God comes near to us. And then we somehow have to, you know, we may not be ready to receive God coming near to us. The disciples were willing to go back and try fishing, which, was it fruitful? No. It was not fruitful until what?
He told them to go on the right side, so it was like they were looking the wrong direction, just like we do a lot.
Yeah,
We're not looking the right way.
Right,
and he also called them children, which that stuck out to me.
That did, yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like children.
they're still acting like children in a way.
Yeah, because I mean, as soon as he died, okay, well, let's forget all that, let's just go back to,
Well, again, they may have just been regrouping, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, what do you
Yeah.
know how to do and do well? Hey, remember we used to fish?
yeah.
Oh, let's do that, let's see how that works out.
Well, also, when we did the story about them leaving the fish, Buddy Oliver, may you rest in peace, but I always say, y'all have to remember that was their livelihood. I mean, that was no easy thing to walk away from fishing, because that was what they ate, that's how they fed the children, that's how they did everything. You know, that was their basic life, and they just let it go. And to me, this is really a reach, but it's okay. They go back to their basic life of what they have to do, but then it's expanded by Jesus, remembering that they have to also do Jesus' work at the same time.
Yeah, 'cause it's not fruitful without Jesus, you know?
Well, yeah, but just Jesus, but I mean, the people have, they lock up people that are just walking around prophesying, and you have responsibilities out there too. And so to me, they've gone back to their responsibilities at the expense of what they know they should also be doing.
Well, I see it too, the same way that this is something they're comfortable with and they know how to do. And they know they're supposed to go out. And this is kind of maybe a time where they're thinking about, okay, we've got to get ready for this, but we're not quite sure what to do yet. So they go back to fishing for now.
For now, yeah. Yes, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and you maybe can pull out of the story from your own life when something has changed or something is different. And I remember trying to go hear a band play with a baby.
What?
So Todd and I wanted to go out, and we love live music.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, that's fine, we'll just put Ned in the stroller and we'll just go. Do you think that worked well? It did not.
No.
Yeah, I hope
But-
his hearing isn't.
No, I don't think
It's not for anybody.
No, not for anyone,
Uh,
not for anyone. And we used to think, this is it, this is what caused all of his problems of his life. No, so I mean, that's a silly example, of course, but I didn't, I knew I wanted to hear music and be alive and out. And I think I'd been in my house by myself for 8 straight weeks, and this is just long enough that I didn't have to nurse while we were at this bar with this baby. So it didn't work. It didn't work, and we found out later you can get a babysitter. Someone will come to
It's
your house.
interesting that you're having this conversation because we're going to go to Nashville for my nephew's wedding in September. I have a daughter-in-law who got her first baby, does not want to leave the baby back. She's willing to go to Vegas and leave the baby back with her mother, but wants to take the baby to Nashville, but no children invited to the wedding. And I said, that's going to change everything because we can't go, you can't go to Lower Broadway or this or that. And so just like my husband and I had this conversation, I was like, don't they understand babysitters? Don't they understand somebody outside the family babysitting for these people? Why do they have to take the babies every single place they go? You're waiting for them to wake up and smell the roses one day.
It took me a while.
It's interesting
We didn't go back for like 6 or 8 months. I'm not saying it happened
Yeah.
the next
Yeah.
week, but
Oh, yeah.
but once we could figure out that, yes, someone could come to our house and our child would survive
Yeah.
for whatever that time was. And it wasn't, could we go for an hour? And then we kind of gradually grew on that. But,
Then they
yes.
went for a few days.
No, I didn't. That took years. Goodness.
Oh, you know, my daddy was right there. I could go.
Yeah, but we didn't have your dad.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I can find a
I mean,
babysitter, so they'll take it.
Go ahead.
Thinking about a memory when, I was in New York painting a stage set when I got news that my father had died. And I was in a group of friends doing this project and of course I cried and they comforted me and somebody helped me find a flight home. But there was a good amount of time between that moment and the flight. And so, after a little bit of crying and comforting, I went back to paint stage sets. What I was doing before. I mean, you have to do something.
Yes.
And
emotionally,
I
you
had
have to
done my
do something.
tears. I had done the tears and comforting, and there was this bit of time. So what to do, but what you were doing before.
Lovely analogy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you could remember that. Yeah.
It was an odd thing.
Yeah. And if you think about that mixture of emotion,
Mhm.
yeah, this is something I know when I'm not leaving yet. And yet,
I'm here.
you might still be torn about it. Like you
Exactly.
want to be somewhere else.
It wasn't like painting before I had the
Yeah,
news, but I went back to painting.
Yeah.
Because I had to do something.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna sit
You want to
here.
be occupied.
Something, you just.
Something there might be some other pieces of that, right?
Mhm.
I know how to do this. I'm not sure I know how to, be a mom, grieve,
Mhm.
right, like live into the fact that I now don't have a dad. Well,
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she was there too.
But she was there
I mean,
too.
she was there. I mean, otherwise you'd have to go somewhere else and do something.
Well, exactly, all the stuff was there to paint, and everybody,
They needed pain.
and. So
It's gonna be there when you got home.
It's either go cry some more somewhere else.
Yeah, don't get too many tears on the paint because it might run.
It's very interesting, And it wasn't the same as painting before, but it was painting the set. And everybody was changed
Mhm.
as we painted.
And they were still living into this
Everybody-
Jesus that was dead,
Mhm.
but risen, not seen, but seen.
Mhm.
I mean, I wonder after this moment, were they a little bit more used to seeing maybe Jesus pop up somewhere? I mean, we just have this thing where he just kind of, and we spent a lot of time early in this class, right? Oh, like, how did he get there? Where was he the rest of the time? Who picked out his wardrobe? Whatever the thing was, we were fixated on, and, because maybe our own experiences direct us to sort of think of it that way, you know, and in his appearance, he's still giving, in a sense. Did he make fire? Was the fire there? Did he get someone else to fire? But, you know, he's still giving of himself, even in that moment on the beach, right? And I think this, you know, that again, you said it, Laura, the idea of bread, the idea of giving of himself, the idea of this multiplication of fishes in a different set. We had that story way back in the beginning of his ministry of the multiplication of loaves and fishes. And he's multiplied the fish in a different way. The fishing experience in a different way. So there's themes, if we were gonna approach it that way, thematically, there's themes that just travel through the story, just beautifully travel through the story that connect all of that to his former life as well. To the life that he had with them. And maybe the life he has with us, right? I think our job as believers is that you know, we know, even if briefly, know the story of loaves and fishes. We know this story of fishes and loaf. And then how does that manifest? What is our seeing Jesus on the shore moment? What is our hearing, believing, noticing, trusting? I mean, would you be willing? I love that they fish naked. I don't know why.
Is there any reason that Peter?
Because they did fish naked, because who wants to smell like fish? And they gotta put their clothes back on when they get off. And it's all men and it's.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, okay, they got the nets, and they can pick up the nets and pop them in the boat. Well, where are these clothes? Because they're on the bottom floor of the boat, you know, I'm sitting there going.
Maybe they had a special compartment.
Maybe they didn't wear him onto the boat. So-
Yeah,
He put it
well, he
on
says
the
he
boat.
puts his clothes on to jump in
the water.
Yeah. I'm sitting there going, okay, maybe they were sneaky, so he had to wash it real
It
quick.
is Peter, all right? He is the most impetuous
Yes.
person we know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made this passage more readable, right?
Yeah.
More interesting.
Yes.
But it,
Well, the other fish and loaves story, is on the mountain, right?
Or on the plane.
Well, but it was where he'd gone and the
Yeah.
little boy with the baskets and all that, okay, so that's up. And, Jewish people, good things happened to them on the mountain. Moses went to the mountain to get the law. And so if you were trying to explain a story about Jesus to Jewish people, if you want them to listen, you mentioned some things about Moses on the mountain and Jesus feeds the multitudes on the mountain, right? So that's that's terrible, a marketing scheme, you know, a thing to let them know that it was on the mountain. The Romans lived by the sea, right? Or the Greeks and Romans, they fished, and that's sort of foreign to the Jewish people, but these people don't go up on mountains to get good news. They're by the sea. So to me, it's like different ways to approach different types of people with the same story.
Catch their attention.
But it
and their
depends that
interest.
the writers were after different sets of it.
yeah.
Interesting. It is,
I
because.
think that Christ Church should I mean, our church, Good Shepherd Presbyterian Nashville home, should have a t-shirt that says good things happen on the mountain.
Nice. Yes, yeah, I never think about the transfiguration, you know, same thing, same way to tell the story. Like, how does that become, how do we try to combine all those things? Oh, it happened on a mountain, there was Moses, there was Elijah, there was, you know, past, present, and future all in one. Yes, and, John was writing to a different audience, and this story does not appear in this form in the other Gospels, so it does have its own special place, Jesus by the sea. And also, most places call it the Tiberias, which would have been the Roman name for the Sea of Galilee. So yes, I'm gonna give you some credit there and back you up. Back you up a bit. All right, anything else about this? And I'll read a reflection and you can see maybe where my head was at that time that I wrote it.
I just, we could go on about reflections, but again,
Yeah, go
it
ahead.
says, that disciple whom Jesus loved. It's like, well, he loved all the
I
disciples.
think that's,
Well, that disciple that Jesus loved is the way John refers to the disciple at the foot of the cross, when he introduces him to his mother and the mother to him. And some people say that's John, right? And not John, the author of the gospel, but John, the beloved disciple. And that's just the way John refers to that disciple. Jesus did indeed love every disciple, I'm sure. But maybe that there was, I don't know, because I don't know any more than that, except just what's written in the text, right? Like we could all speculate.
Yeah,
But I think the impression is to say most of them are there, right? The author's going to some detail to let you know that most of those disciples are present. Not the women, they were not there, but most of them
yeah.
were there. I had a friend once who painted a picture of a Waffle House of Jesus as the one with at the cook thing. Anyway, this is feeding, the disciples. It's just, and they had this. So you know how Waffle House has round lamps? You may not know this
No.
because I go to Waffle House way too often. So anyway, she had the 3 orbs of those lights in the, so there's a lot of symbolism, but anyway, it's just a really great interpretation of Jesus appearing to his disciples and feeding them. So this is called the multiplication of sharing. The risen does not aim at the temple of the holy city, but at the daily crossroads, houses, inns, streets, lakes. He places himself in the folds of the dramas and hopes of men and brings a breath multiplying the goods, especially when it seems as though human hopes are at an end. And the fish overflow, and the banquet can be prepared. The bread and the fish are so familiar in the hands of the risen one. Both elements will be symbols of him, bread of life, meaning the essential things to God, to men, and the fish, by which Christians will use this title. Right, that was the symbol, like on stones or walls or stuff to show where Christians were meeting. Only the young of age and young of spirit are able to learn here near the lake this new law of life. Only dividing can you multiply. To multiply goods, one must know how to share them. To really capitalize, one must fully enter into solidarity. This is the economic anti-materialism. The world travels at 2 speeds. 20% of humanity use 80% of the resources of the earth, and 80% of humanity has only the remaining 20%. When I am hungry, it's a personal problem. When my neighbor is hungry, it's a moral problem. Christ is hungry in more than half the human race. Every day Jesus becomes bread. Every day Jesus becomes hunger. Mother Teresa said that, not me. We are old when the old logic of overdoing keeps working. Those who do not produce enough use and throw away. It is the north of the world's hunger for money that induces hunger in the south. The poor are the meaning in the world, the northern part of the hemisphere versus those living in the southern hemisphere. The poor are those who do not have, do not know, and they are not, they ultimately are nothing. Sharing the fate and the hopes of the miserable of the earth means to have passion for a united and fair world. The act of volunteering is a silent revolution today. Good deeds do not make noise, just like noise doesn't make good deeds. To believe in Christ is to become able to allow those who are still in the tomb to rise. Resurrection is freeing them from oppression, and the risen awaits us at the feast. It's a more of a reflection on,
That was good.
who's fed and who's not fed, and then maybe what,
What is that? If I were to Google it, what would I Google?
I can send you the PowerPoint. You would just, I wrote it.
Okay, so.
I can send you the
You
PowerPoint.
Googled a lot of things.
It was just more a reflection of how we, or how I was feeling on first reading that text again. Like who is the bread, who are the bread and the fish for? And how can that become perverted?
It's in these papers she gave us
Yes.
last
I
week.
guess that's, I can make it up.
The week before.
Yeah,
The week before.
Well, there's set right here.
all right, y'all, let's pray. Jesus risen, render us docile to regain hope after our failures. You, the risen, sit at supper with us. During the Easter days of your stay with us, you didn't show yourself the victorious God through radiance and the thunder, but the simple God of the ordinary that celebrates Easter on the bank of a lake. Make us witnesses of your Easter in the everyday with its monotony, where you have always awaited us on the shores of our trials. You sit at our suppers of satiated but empty men. You sit at the suppers of poor men who still have hope. And the world you love will be new, modeled around your Easter. Amen.
Amen.
I'll make sure you get that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else before we go to, station? What's our next one? Station. Is that Jesus and Peter?
Yeah.
Jesus and Peter.
Okay. Again from John, it follows immediately on the heels of this by
A younger class of 11.
okay. Bye, Barbara. Okay, so this follows immediately on the heels of the fish. Right? This is, if we're reading it right from the Bible, this is the next bit of reading. Would someone read that? Sharon, can I get you to read that?
Sure.
Okay.
When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. The second time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep.
What stands out to you all?
Well, the first question, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? What exactly is the these?
I don't think it's the fishes.
It's not the fish. But in other translations, it says, Jesus, he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these others do?
Oh.
So and that could be answer your question, but I mean, it could be sometimes also translators feel the need to fill in the blanks for us. No, right? They don't like, just like you were like, what other these? And so it's oftentimes translators, different interpretations of the Bible or different versions might tend to fill in a little bit more by adding the words than these others do. Okay. Now, or because, and I happen to know, because I have the, Catholic version on my computer, okay? So I also happen to know who Peter became, right? The church made Peter the first pope, in essence, right? And so it would be important for a translator to establish primacy of Peter, okay? That it would be important to sort of say, even then,
Yeah.
Jesus is making Peter the head of the church.
No.
I mean, we already know that because he said, on this rock, I will build my church. You know, we have these other spaces. So I'm wondering if that filling in more than these others do sets that up in a way. Because you might have a different understanding of who the others are. Others, all disciples, all Jews, all, you know, I don't know what it is. But I think certainly the way it played out and the way the story was written is that was to establish Peter, to continue to establish Peter as that dude that was going to be the bishop of Rome. Okay.
Well, I was another disciple, I said, I love you, you know, like I would
How do
argue
we
with
get,
that.
well, how do we get into the, so maybe there's something beyond that, right? Like, those of us who have children or are related to families, there's often that pull when, you know, do you love me more than my brother? Do you love me more than my sister? Who do you love the best? Who's who's your favorite? Certainly you've heard all these kinds of conversations among people.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and then we say, I love you, you know, for who you are. Or we say, you're all different, or we say something else, but, I think that indicates a humanness to Peter. And particularly what you know about his personality, that he would definitely be someone who wanted to make sure after everything he'd gone through, and you notice it's the number 3, right? And how many times does he deny him? So there's, again, going back to Irv's question about 153, this is a way to tell this story that makes, you know, if you love reading and you read a lot of literature, you know, you look for those sort of clues when you read, like, well, how does that connect to this? And how does that do? So this is a connection back to that denial, next to those 3 denials. So again, for the ease of telling the story orally, and then again, just, you know, to kind of tie it together. This is the same story, this is the same people, this is the same Jesus, you know?
But that's the whole thing about the denial is what came to my mind. It's like, okay, so why did he want Peter to be the head? Did he realize that Peter had gone through the most transformation in his beliefs and stuff of that nature? Or?
Well, he certainly did, didn't he? I mean, I think, he must have known something about his character and personality, that even though he was quite human in the retelling of his story, I think most of us can find a place in there, you know, where we identify with that. Like there's
Maybe he saw leadership qualities.
maybe so.
I mean, that would make the most sense to me.
Yeah.
I want somebody in that role that's strong leader.
Or what he knew.
With the right heart, and we gotta start with his wrong heart.
Yeah.
But you would, I mean, you would think of Jesus's followers, the disciples and maybe others who are close followers, you'd think they would all have a good heart. I mean, I would think that, but it takes more than that. Certainly takes that. But,
It's a combination.
Yeah.
And Jesus sets forth in the 3 questions what those qualities are. What is the quality that he's most concerned about? Love,
Taking care of.
compassion. I mean, I don't, you can, you know, weave in what you want there, but I think there's definitely, he's looking for Peter. This isn't just about the person it is about Jesus, you know. But it is love that leads to something. So when I think about, our mission statement, right? Faith in action. So that's what it is. It's faith, love that leads to something. It just doesn't, it's not just a good feeling you have. It's just not a note you can read from time to time. It's an actual, there's action that follows that feeling, emotion, connection. It goes beyond there. And in this case, Jesus says, feed my sheep, tend my lambs, take care of my sheep, whatever, some translate it differently, but this idea of caring. And we know what sheep are, because we've just heard we know about the good shepherd, right? I mean, we know that he's not telling him to go become a sheep herder, right?
Right?
I guess someone could read it that way.
But sheep are something we all, we can't see Jesus, but we can see sheep and their behaviors are innate, they're not changing. And so it's something that we can relate to, that how they follow the voice of their shepherd. So it's something that helps us with what we can't touch and see.
Right. And again, when we know what the world and what the faith then determined Peter's role to be, and Peter accepted that role, and then we know how we tell that story beyond scripture. We tell that story as that he went on, and now we all are here, me particularly with a collar on, in that apostolic succession. He, baptized in the name of the Trinity, and then went on to baptize others, who baptized others, who baptized others, who baptized others, so that to the present day. And so this sheep caring, this people caring, this people loving is really sort of saying, I don't know if how the church has manifested itself is the intent of our good shepherd. I have no idea. It is how it is. I mean, it is what it is and how it came to be. Whether that was the intent, I have no idea, right? But it is important to kind of see that construction and the rings that come from it. And first of all, there's reconciliation, isn't there? There's not Jesus saying, hey, I want to talk to you about that thing that happened back in Pilate's courtyard. You want to tell me what you were thinking about? Yeah.
Well, he does forgiveness. I mean,
Yeah. He's already done.
Yeah,
It's moved on. It's over.
yeah, no grudges.
But it might be hard for us to receive that. Because, look, we've all denied Jesus. We can talk about the hundreds and thousands of ways we do it all the time. And then to know that we're still in the call, we've still received the call to serve, right? To serve, to feed, to help, to love, to whatever those verbs are that we want to articulate.
It's one of the many resurrections that we get to experience ourselves every day. I mean, the mistakes that we make. Christ has died. Where's God in this? What's going on? He's risen. Oh, good. He didn't abandon me. And he'll come again. Yes, because I will fall again in my humanness. I will. And so the pattern just keeps repeating itself.
But behind that, or in front of that, or next to it, right, is this presence of God encouraging us.
Oh, absolutely.
In spite of all the times we're going to be like, I didn't see that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know that man. Right. And then hopefully we can hear, do you love me? Now, in this case, we might say, do you love me more than others, or more than these? Might be whatever, my car, my money, my bank account,
Tangible things.
my
Status.
prejudice, the things that I allow to stand in for God frequently,
Mhm.
right? The things I substitute for that. Do you love me more than these? Sure. I mean, it's so, I want to hear Peter say, of course I do, because I know I say that too. Of course I do. Of course I do. And yet, I might make a different decision in the midst of something that's happening. Anything else? Okay, well, here's my thoughts on that text. I'm sure you're all waiting. After the gathering at the lake, a walk along the water, Simon, son of John, do you love me? It is here that the chant of chants is recorded in the New Testament. 3 times the risen asks Peter, do you love me? Lovers ask each other, do you love me? Do you really love me? Often we forget that the groom of the new humanity is Christ, and Christ the groom, in fact, shares everything with the bride. His father, his reign, his mother, his body and blood in the Eucharist. And we, like Peter, that betrayed him 3 times, feel frightened in answering. But with him, with the courage that comes from the Spirit, we say to him, you know everything. You know I love you. I want to love you. So, to Peter, that passes the test. The risen entrusts to him the lambs and the sheep. They cannot feed themselves of anything but the sacrifice of who, like Jesus, is pastor and pasture. He is inviting and becomes food. All of us, flock of his pasture, are sure of Peter's guidance, our caravan companion, our guide in the name of the risen. Like Peter passes the test. We too are called by name. Do you love me? Only if you love me, you can feed. Meaning, can work together to grow today's world that tend to I guess we got Cheryl. Love means seeing the other person the way God created him. So, I only write these things so that I can actually live into them.
That's good.
Now you get to hear all of my stuff.
Well, I really like it because
Well, I hope it matches where you are.
Lunchtime over there for dinner.
much so, I guess, because
Yeah.
in some ways, because you don't understand why people won't help you, help the other people, you know, and that's starting to be easy. You know, that
Well, sometimes it is sad. You know, it's emotional. It is.
obviously I can't talk about it,
Just,
always have to get her.
I'm just gonna talk for her now. Okay. Well, let us pray. We thank you, risen Christ, for all those who have followed in your apostolic succession with such generosity and warmth in the sacrifice of these beautiful but hard times. Every day you call upon us also. Do you love me more than them? To us with Peter and under Peter, you entrust a portion of your pasture, and we entrust ourselves to you. Persuade us, teacher and giver of life, for only if we love, then can we take care of your pasture, and only with our sacrifice can we feed it with your truth and your peace. Amen.
Amen.
Well, all right, a few minutes, we've gone a little bit over, so thanks for your patience. And again, we will not be together on the 18th, which is next Thursday, and we will return on the 25th and wrap up any of the remaining stations of direction. And I thank you for your careful reading, and listening, and participating in what I think, because I'm very self-centered, I think this has been marvelous. But I am really so thankful to be able to talk about this with other people.
I think it's been great. I appreciate you writing all that.
Well, it's just, again, for me, it just was the act of doing it and doing it and participating in it.
I'm glad you found something to talk about.
Yeah, because you know how hard it is for me. I struggle with finding things to talk about and
We
to,
all fight that.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So go in peace, to love and serve the Lord. We have church at noon and followed by lunch. So I hope if you're interested in any of that, that you would stay.
I will be there.